Here are 7 lies men over 50 need to unlearn to finally live free. Be sure to let me know in the comments which of these you can relate to most. Lie number 1, if you work hard and follow the rules, life will work out. This is perhaps the most foundational illusion sold to men. You were told a story. Show up on time, do what's expected, stay in your lane, and life will eventually reward you with respect, stability, or happiness. Maybe your father told you this, or your teachers, maybe society did. But somewhere around your 40s or 50s, you started to notice something unsettling. You did everything right. You showed up, you provided, you minimized disruption, you became the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who could be counted on. And what arrived instead of fulfillment was a kind of quiet disenchantment, a gnawing sense that you've been following someone else's map to a destination you never chose. And here's what they didn't tell you. Systems are designed to extract value from compliance, not to deliver meaning to the compliant. The rules were never written for your satisfaction. They were written for your predictability. The corporate ladder, the social expectations, the template for successful manhood, these structures need your conformity to function, but they don't need your happiness. The truth is uncomfortable but freeing. If you want a life that feels real, you have to stop asking for permission to live it. You have to start making decisions based on what matters to you, not what's expected of you. And this doesn't mean becoming irresponsible. It means becoming response-able, able to respond to your own values instead of just reacting to external demands. The game was rigged from the start, and this isn't news to you, but you've felt it, you've lived it, but maybe now it's time to stop playing by someone else's rules. Lie number 2, your identity is defined by your career or provider role. For decades, when someone asked, "Who are you?" you probably answered with what you do. I'm an engineer. I'm a manager. I'm a cop. I'm the breadwinner. The role of provider became more than a responsibility. It became the scaffolding of your entire sense of self. But here's what happens when that scaffolding gets removed. Retirement arrives, or you get laid off or divorced, or your kids grow up and stop needing your financial support, or maybe your wife starts earning more than you do. Suddenly there's a vacuum. And if you're not essential to someone else's survival, then who the hell are you? If you're not producing value for others, what's your value? This identity crisis isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature of this lie. When your worth is entirely tied to your utility, you never have to confront the deeper question of who you actually are beneath all of the doing. You never have to develop a relationship with yourself that isn't based on your usefulness to others. So you just keep working and sacrificing. But at this point, this is not a crisis. It's an invitation to discover that your value is not based on your productivity. Your worth isn't determined by your paycheck or your title or how much your family depends on you. You are not your job. You are not your utility. And you don't stop being valuable the moment you're no longer producing something for others. The man you are at your core, the one with curiosities, perspectives, experiences, and wisdom, that man exists independent of any role you've played. So the question isn't, what will I do without my identity? The question is, who was I before I learned to define myself by what I do? That person is still there. He's been waiting. Lie number 3. Marriage is about sacrifice and compromise. The cultural narrative around long-term relationships, especially for men, often emphasizes self-sacrifice. Be the provider. Keep the peace. Don't rock the boat. Put her needs first. Don't pursue anything you're passionate about. Swallow your complaints. Compromise until it hurts, then compromise some more. And on the surface, this sounds noble, selfless. But there's a difference between healthy compromise and disappearing. And over time, what starts as giving becomes something else entirely. You start suppressing opinions to avoid conflict. You withhold needs to prevent disappointment. You avoid speaking truth to preserve harmony. You become a smaller version of yourself in service of a relationship that, ironically, gets weaker as you get smaller. Here's what nobody tells you. Authenticity isn't optional in intimacy. When you consistently choose peacekeeping over truth-telling, you're not protecting your relationship. You're protecting your relationship from reality, and eventually that catches up. Your partner probably didn't fall in love with a yes man. She fell in love with a person, someone with opinions, desires, boundaries, and a backbone. And when you disappear into accommodation, you rob her of the chance to love the real you. You rob yourself of the chance to be truly known and to be a man living with a purpose. And you rob the relationship of the creative tension that comes from two whole people choosing each other, not two halves trying to merge. Real partnership isn't about becoming smaller so someone else can be comfortable. It's about becoming more yourself and inviting them to do the same. It's about saying, I love you enough to show up authentically, even when it's inconvenient. Sometimes love looks like conflict. Sometimes intimacy requires disruption. The goal isn't to avoid all friction, it's to have friction that leads to somewhere meaningful. And if you're getting value from this so far, please support the channel by liking the video. Thank you. Lie number 4. If you just keep the peace, everything will be fine. Men are often socialized to be emotional managers, particularly in relationships and family dynamics. Your job is to keep things smooth, minimize drama, and ensure everyone stays comfortable. But here's the problem. Peacekeeping is not peace, it's management. And chronic emotional management eventually turns into something toxic, which is resentment. When you consistently prioritize short-term comfort over long-term honesty, you create what psychologists call pseudo-intimacy. Everyone gets along on the surface, but nothing real is happening underneath. You avoid the hard conversations. You let things slide. You say, it's fine when it's not fine. You convince yourself you're being mature, but really you're being avoidant. Over time, this pattern creates distance in the very relationships you're trying to protect. And your wife starts to feel like she's married to a diplomat instead of a person. Your kids learn that real feelings should not be acknowledged and get pushed underground. Your friends begin to sense that you're performing rather than connecting. The peace you fought so hard to preserve becomes a performance and one that no one truly believes anymore. Because deep down, everyone knows that unspoken tension is just tension with better manners. So here's the counterintuitive truth. The relationships that survive conflict are often stronger than the ones that avoid it. When you can disagree and still love each other, when you can speak difficult truths and work through them together, when you can say, this isn't working for me, without it meaning I don't love you, that's when real intimacy becomes possible. The goal isn't to eliminate all tension. It's to transform tension into connection. But that requires showing up with a full range of who you are, not just the comfortable parts. Lie number 5. Success means status and stuff. You've been sold a bill of goods about what constitutes a successful life. The bigger house, the better job title, the nicer car, the retirement account, the respect of peers. These became the scorecards by which you measured your worth as a man. But here's what happens when you reach your 50s. You start to realize that external achievements, no matter how impressive, can't fill an internal void. And I know this one personally. Even if you've accumulated the status symbols, climbed the ladders, built the life you thought you wanted, there's still something missing. A restlessness, a sense that you're living someone else's definition of success. And this isn't because you're not grateful or you're going through, midlife crisis hysteria. This is your inner wisdom finally getting loud enough to be heard over the cultural noise. Your soul is telling you something important. Acquisition isn't the same as fulfillment. Achievement isn't the same thing as meaning. And approval from others isn't the same as self-respect. The problem isn't that you wanted nice things or professional recognition. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when your identity becomes scaffolded entirely around external validation. When your sense of worth depends on variables you can't fully control, like market conditions, other people's opinions, societal definitions of status, you're essentially outsourcing your self-esteem. Real success isn't about how much you've accumulated. It's about how much alignment exists between what you actually value and how you actually live. It's about waking up and recognizing the person in the mirror. It's about going to bed knowing you spent your day in service of something that matters to you, not just something that impresses others. The question isn't, Have I achieved enough? The question is, am I becoming the version of myself that I believe I'm meant to be? Lie number 6. It's too late to change. This might be the most seductive lie men tell themselves after 50. They call it acceptance, but really it's resignation dressed up as wisdom. Oh, this is just who I am now. I'm too old to start over. I've made my bed, now I need to lie in it. The time for big changes has passed. But here's what this narrative conveniently ignores. By the time you're 50, you have something 20-somethings don't have: experience. You've lived through enough cycles, enough failures, enough successes to actually know what matters. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from wisdom. The young man who chose your career path 30 years ago was operating with limited information. He may have been trying to please his parents, impress peers, or meet social expectations. You're not that man anymore. You know things now that he couldn't have known. You understand your temperament, your values, your non-negotiables. You've seen what empty achievements look like from the inside. And this isn't about dramatic upheaval or abandoning commitments. This is about recognizing that you have enough life experience now to make better decisions. Decisions based on self-knowledge rather than external pressure. Change at 50 isn't about starting over. It's about course correcting. It's about taking everything you've learned and applying it more intentionally. The choices you make now have the weight of experience behind them. They're more likely to stick because they're coming from a place of real understanding. You're not too old to become who you were meant to be. You're finally old enough to know who that is. I was 50 when I had to rebuild my life after the end of a long marriage. You absolutely can do it too. Lie number 7. Masculinity is a liability. Somewhere along the way, a quiet shift happened. Masculinity, once associated with strength, stability, and purpose, it really wasn't that complicated, started being treated like a problem to be solved. Not by everyone, but enough that the message sank in. Tone it down, don't be too assertive, don't take up too much space, make sure you don't come across as threatening. In some cases, this even became, you should feel guilty for who you are. And so, a lot of good men started second-guessing themselves. They softened, they deferred, they tried not to offend, tried not to be that guy. But here's the thing. We didn't become better men by disconnecting from our masculine core. We just became more uncertain, more hesitant, more invisible, more resentful, and less effective. At the other extreme, it's the distortion of masculinity that causes harm. The posturing, the domination, the performative toughness that's more about insecurity than real strength. But the solution isn't to abandon being men. It's to reclaim it on your own terms. Real masculinity is not the problem. It isn't about being a bully or a doormat. It's about being solid, reliable, present. A man who has a spine and a heart. A man who protects without controlling. Who leads without being demanding. Who stands his ground, not to overpower others, but because he knows who he is. You don't have to apologize for being a man, and you don't have to prove it to anyone either. You just have to embody it in a way that reflects your values, your experience, and your integrity. Integrated masculinity isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. And when you live from that place, people feel it. They trust it, and more importantly, you trust yourself again. It's about being your best version of yourself and not apologizing for it. Let me know what your experience has been. Can you relate to any of these lies? Are there any that you would add to the list? And if you're a guy close to middle age, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching.